So welcome everyone. Today we're going to be day 2 of interview week, speaking about preparing for your virtual interview. Again, my name is Manisha. I'm the director here at Health Professions Advising. So very nice to have you here with me. So in terms of interviewing, just like any other part of your application, you really want to speak in terms of what competencies, what attributes, what fit, what value you bring to the school and the health field that you're going for. So I know this is the list from AAMC, but I strongly feel like this applies to any health profession in addressing your answers from this competency base. So and thinking about what am I revealing about myself? How can I showcase these values, these competencies, these attributes that I bring to the school? And sorry, I gotta also let people in. But it's not, there we go. Okay, so just to get to the good stuff, I'm going to talk about some of this, but schools interview you to get to know you better. They're evaluating you on your readiness for both the profession and for a graduate level program. So up to now, you've done a lot of writing. You have spent time showcasing who you are, revealing who you are. But at the end of the day, it's still a flat profile. They've gotten to, in essence, read your voice. Now they want to meet you and to understand your motivations a little better. So your grades and your scores, as well as what you wrote in the primary application, got you to here. So what happens next? They want to get to know you a little bit better. So they're looking to understand personality, maturity, self-awareness, your ethics, your strengths, your awareness of your weaknesses, how you communicate. Again, the difference between your written application and a verbal application. And at the end of the day, also, I'm trying to understand how you fit with that school. So my question to you, what have you heard? We're 2 years going on 3 into the pandemic, 2 cycles of virtual interviewing. What have you heard? What have you heard? What, questions, what concerns? What have you heard about virtual interviewing? And again, you can unmute, you can call out answers, you can type it in the chat. Okay, you've heard there might be some challenges to show who you are in this virtual format. Anything else? Any other concerns or questions or things that you've heard from friends or peers that have gone through this, or just you're hearing out in the world? Yeah, there can be technical difficulties. You wouldn't know it now, but an hour ago, I was fighting with Eddie Rome to just let me get on, and having to decide if it's going to be Eddie Rome or my guest, or my hotspotting it with my phone. There is a convenience of not traveling completely. There is, going from one side of the house to the other, and you're interviewing versus flying cross country and all the arrangements. So these are some things definitely that we consider when you're thinking about a virtual interview. But I'm also wanting to, also let you know, there are different types of virtual interviews. Live, like you're talking to a person today. So a live video conference that connects you with the interviewer, with the panel, or if you're in a group situation, with other candidates. On demand or asynchronous, so using video technology to present you questions and record your response. No person, you just get a blank screen, your question pops up and you're talking to that blank screen. What are some examples of platforms that you have heard of?
I have heard about like the multiple people in one Zoom call. Um,
Mhm.
they make you interact with each other in front of them and talk to them as well, just to see how you behave in a group or things like that.
Yeah. So Kira, Casper, absolutely. Though Casper, not duet itself, yes, but in Casper, we're going to talk a little bit more about tomorrow in terms of situational judgment. But yeah, within Casper, there's also the duet feature. So yeah, there's a lot of different platforms floating around there, and just trying to understand how do I put all this together. So let's just talk about it one section at a time. So let's talk about some basics of the virtual interview. So just like a live in-person interview, you will likely have one or multiple interviews. Again, this is all coordinated by the school. You might actually be, unlike an in-person interview where you can expect to start at one point and kind of go through half a day, you may be asked to come online at various times or even different days. So your interview experience, while planned by the school, may be staggered. And so that's something that you have to be prepared for, especially if you need to ask for time off, if you're working or if you're in classes. Just be aware it's not going to be one day that you're taking off, which is different than a live. Same as a live, you will be interviewed by either a faculty or a current student, either a panel interview, an individual interview, or you're part of a group. And all the formats, a one-on-one, panel group, or even multiple mini interviews. UC Davis Medical School last year did MMIs via virtual format. Other schools did as well, and multiple platforms out there. We're also aware that some schools are doing both a combination of asynchronous and live. So part of your interview might be with another person, a part of your interview may be recorded. Some schools are also adding an info session type group meeting where, had this been an in-person interview, you would have had a tour of the school and a meeting with the dean. They're incorporating that as part of the interview. Sometimes it's before your actual interview, sometimes it might be after. They're just getting a group of candidates together and having that info session. And then some schools are also, as we talked about yesterday, a few schools are offering the option of in-person or virtual. And then that's a decision you might need to make. Do I want to fly or drive somewhere and coordinate where am I staying? How am I eating? How am I getting through all this? Or do you want to do it from the convenience of a virtual interview? And so while we know most schools are having virtual only, a few schools do plan to offer both. And again, it's a decision you may need to make. So let's start with the nuts and bolts of interviewing, of a virtual interview. So let's talk about preparation. Technology is a thing. Sometimes it works in your favor. Sometimes it does not work in your favor. So I would have you think about, first, what device are you using? Will you be doing this interview through a computer, a smartphone, or tablet? The reliability of that technology. 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to get a new computer, but up before that, my old computer, which was about 4 years old, sometimes took 45 minutes to just boot up. I lived a lifetime in those 45 minutes just watching it boot up. That made me very, very angry and anxious, especially if I needed to do something right there and then. So what technology are you using? Make sure you check your camera and mic. I've come to realize if I go between Zoom and the virtual platform hosted by my doctor's office, Zoom gets mad. Zoom gets very mad and cuts off the sound. So then I'm doing a whole lot of clicking, trying to appease Zoom so I can have sound again. After that, I just use a different I use my tablet for medical appointments and my computer for Zoom, just so I'm not dealing with that. What's your internet connectivity like? Is it reliable? Is the speed enough? And that's something you can go online and check. Have an outlet nearby. You know, while my current work laptop is under a year old, I know that when I'm on Zoom, the energy bar is draining super fast. I might at most get 75 minutes or 90 minutes out of it if it's not plugged in. So making sure there's some kind of outlet or power pack. And then depending on what's going on, do you need to download a virtual platform? Do you need to make sure your computer can handle it? Do you need to figure out a different device? And then at the end of the day, also knowing, what do I do if I'm having technical issues? I would have a phone number nearby, ready to go for that purpose. If you know that you might be, you know, there's a chance that you might experience challenges with your computer, camera, Wi-Fi, consider what options do you have. Would you possibly be able to borrow something from family or friends? You know, would you be able to utilize technology at a library, a college, or a community center? If you happen to be near a healthcare institution, are they offering any opportunities for candidates that might be interviewing, anything that would give you a space to be able to interview? And then, like I said, know what to do if you're having technical issues and who to contact, and stay calm, follow instructions. We've been doing this for 2 years. Things do come up. You're going to be okay. It's all going to work out, but staying calm and knowing step by step what to do. But again, any questions about, you know, that come up for you when you're thinking about how to use technology? All right. So one example I just wanted to go over in terms of a virtual type interview is Kira, which is something that's being used by some medical schools, which is a virtual live interview experience. And so it can be for as an individual, it can be used for MMI. They also have the option of an asynchronous interview where you're submitting a timed video or written response. So each question has a designated amount of prep time and live time. And you can track the time for both. With the live interview, with the virtual, it gives randomly generated questions. They're not standardized. Institutions can have different questions that they use and different response times. So again, you may be doing something one day and turning around and having to do something completely different for another interview. But to just show you an example of Kira, if you look at the top left-hand corner, you can see that this is one of 3 stations and how much time you have total. You see the question presented in front of you. So the question is presented in text-only form. You'll have that certain amount of time to read it and prepare the questions, usually 1 or 2 minutes. And then you'll automatically be connected to your interviewer or interviewers afterwards to discuss the question. During your live time, your camera and microphone will be on and you'll be able to see and hear your interviewer. We're during the other time, if you look at the bottom of my screen, you could see that the camera is off and you're just looking at the question. You can also track your remaining time on the top left hand, so you see the counter so that you are aware how much time you have left to answer the specific question. So we're jumping into the prep time to here's the live time. And if you notice again at the live, it says live in the corner. It shows that you have 1 minute remaining. The nice thing is they still have the question posted to the side so that you still have access to seeing the question. And then you get that 1 minute reminder. And then after that, you're zoomed out of the room into your next station. Kira can also have a written example. So you see the question displayed in text form throughout your response time. There's no video, there's no preparation. And I have heard that they give you a little bit longer time for the written form. There are practice questions in Kira so that if you want to get familiar with the platform or double check that your device is set up properly. But there's some key differences that you need to know between practice and the real assessment questions. During the practice, you can complete your questions as many times as you need to. For the real assessment, you only get one chance per question. So be aware of that just keep going, keep going. During the practice, you can replay your responses to understand how you've presented yourself. So you get to see yourself, you get to see how you've presented that. Whereas during the real assessment, again, you're popped out of one station, you're moved into the next station. And then only your responses during the assessment, the actual interview, is evaluated. So no one gets to see your pre-recordings or practice except you. And the practice questions may or may not be related to the real interview. It's really just an opportunity for you to practice on the platform and get comfortable with it. So quick pause there. Any questions for me before I keep going? All right. So let's go back to setting the scene. Where are you going to be interviewing? That's really important to know. When the pandemic first started, and I had to quickly shove a desk, find a room in the house and shove a desk into it. I picked my bedroom, shoved the desk in the corner, right? Because desks should be against walls. And I realized quite early that the Zoom world, got to see everything in the back of my room, which meant all the laundry, the mess, everything I hadn't put away. So that was no good. And I quickly figured out I just push my desk again away from the wall. I have this 4x6 space now. My back is to the wall at home. So right now I'm at work, you see something different. And there's a blank wall behind me. So be aware of what's in your surroundings. So let's set the scene. Let's find a quiet and private space for the duration of your interview where you don't have any distractions. You might need to let your housemates know if you're in a group living situation. I'm home with my family, which includes young children and my parents that talk really loud, and young children that have no boundaries whatsoever. I have had to lock the door. I have had to quickly turn off the video and use my leg to start shoving undressed children away. Or I just tell my family, you are responsible for these young people. Just give me this 1 hour to just be a professional. And so having those conversations. You may also want to think about what is a good interview space for you. If it's not if it's not home, if it's not your room, it might be I've had people interview out of closets, in the garage, in a bathroom facing, again, their back to a wall. They found a room in a library or in a car and set up a sheet in the back so it wasn't noticeable that it was a car. It's key to try to avoid public and busy spaces. I know, I'm seeing a lot more people have their appointments with me while they're at a coffee shop, or they're out to lunch, or they're at a bench, which is great and all. But I have a hard time hearing sometimes over the noise. So you may have headphones on and not hear what I'm hearing, but I'm hearing everything that's going on around you. And that can be very distracting for me if I'm the one speaking to you. You can also, like I mentioned, ask your local college or health professional school if they have any space. Doesn't hurt to ask. They may be able to provide you a quiet, safe space to conduct this interview. Let's also consider the background. At home, it's a blank wall, which is okay most of the time, but I have to also be mindful of lighting. Oddly enough, the lighting is the worst during the morning and before noon because of the way the sun angles in through the window. So I still have to use an overhead light or a LED light very close to me so that I'm not darkened during the video. I've also tested my Zoom different times of the day. So that's something you want to you want to check out. You might have an 8 a.m. interview and you might have a 3 p.m. interview. How is the lighting in your space? Do you have to make adjustments between? Neutral background. Right now, I purposely left stuff around so you can see that, yes, this is still my professional space. But if I were interviewing, I might actually clean up some of this. I have my lunch out. I have a box, I have a heater, I have a backpack. So again, it's not terrible, but I might just clean it up a little bit more from the perspective of who is looking at this and what are they judging about me. I had a med school tell me that they were conducting interviews and someone had a poster of a pot leaf behind them. That's a quite interesting statement to make for your interview. I've also had people have a bunch of pictures or photos, and it can be distracting, maybe one or two, if it's something that you want to show, but I wouldn't have a whole halo. Whereas the interviewer, if my goal is to pay attention to you, I'm not distracted by everything that's going on around you. Clear the clutter. I purposely, like I said, I left this clutter. I might clean up I have the Lysol bottle, I have a binder, start cleaning some of it up. Again, more neutral. I like my home space where I'm away, you look at my wall, but I also know, I have to work on the lighting. I may actually hang up a couple, just something that makes it look a little more cozy and not a perfectly white wall. And then for yourself, minimize distractions. I live in the Apple universe. So if one thing dings, everything dings, my iPad, my watch, my phone. And so in a situation like this, I may be powering down everything else just so I am not distracted by dings and my laptop isn't going ding, ding, ding every time something comes in, which your interviewer can hear. I'm going to pause. Any questions about setting up a background? Thinking about the space you're going to interview in? Uma, that's a really good question. Some you may not. And so that's something to be, aware of. I know that I have worked, remotely at a relative's house that I was visiting, and it happened to be my nephew's room. That's where the best laptop setup was for me to plug into monitors. It does look like the room of a teenage boy, even blurred. You could tell how much stuff was in the background. And so I don't know, Uma, if you can have that capability, but also know that if somebody's walking by your background when you're blurred, it's better than nothing if that's a space you have, but just be aware that everyone on that Zoom meeting recognized I was not in my normal space. And what was that in my background that I'm trying to blur because it was atypical. If you have a laptop, what's nice is if you just kind of have your laptop and sort of move it around to see what it may look like. I've had people have a very narrow spot if they just shifted their laptop a couple inches where it was between two distracting things, but for the purpose of someone who was watching them through the screen, it was the best spot. So pick up your laptop, move it around, see what the person would be seeing. I have had people check your camera angle. Right now, this camera is probably sitting about an inch and a half, maybe two inches over my head. So this is me looking at my computer screen, which is eye level. This is me looking up. There's a difference. So you really want to try to look at the camera so that it looks like you are making eye contact with them. And so again, if you're able to, check the height of your camera. If you're using your laptop's camera, put it on a riser, put it on some books, raise it so that it's a little bit more eye level instead of you looking down at it, which, they're going to get this. Or, if it's too high and you're looking up at this to make eye contact. Where are you positioned in the screen? I have seen, and I'm going to have to duck to do this. Have you had the floating head meetings where you're just talking to someone's chin and up? Or again, I purposely angle this so you're getting a little bit more of my upper body so that if I am making a gesture, you can see that. I'm trying to engage you more so that you can see my body language. Because with the floating head, all you have is this to make an impression. So I'm trying to set the scene so that it was as if we're sitting across the table from each other. I might actually also angle the camera down just a notch more so that you are getting my body language. Lauren, that's a really good question. I think people are understanding if something like that happens. Was it last week? Somebody for 1 hour decided to landscape next door and it wasn't stopping. I finally did shut the window. That dulled it a little bit, but I would be familiar with that. Landscaping, garbage trucks, they're usually on a time. If that's your only interview spot, try to, again, this might not be the time to open windows, and try to keep your laptop as far from the window as possible so that they're not getting that much noise. But I've also had people I've interviewed where it's like, I'm sorry, this is unexpected. My neighbor is suddenly, building something in their garage, and I apologize. So I think people are understanding. I think it's more anxious making for you if you can't actually hear the interviewer, or if you're finding the interviewer going, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? So try to time it the best you can to avoid some of this. If it happens, apologize and just keep going. Keep your cool and keep going. There are other platforms, Sweta. I didn't mention them, and off the top of my head, we've got Duet, which is asynchronous, which is part of the Casper universe. There are other platforms. Gosh, I forgot what it is. There's one that a department on campus does that mimics tabling events. Horrible. It eats all the memory of your computer, so that, I remember attending this as a tabler and my laptop crashed 3 times because it couldn't handle it. So that's why, again, once you know the platform, you want to check it out. You may be shutting down as many, things. Like, I know right now I have 3 Chrome windows open with like 15 to 20 tabs each. I have a PowerPoint open, I have Zoom open, I have Outlook open. That's eating a lot of memory. Zoom happens to be working happily today, but I've also had the situation where I look like this because of the lag. I haven't heard of Microsoft Teams that much. Yeah, my laptop tends to hate that one too and have a lag. So if that's something once you find out about your interview that's coming up, again, think about what technology that you can use that might be better for that specific platform. In this case, if I had to use, Microsoft Teams for 1 hour or more, I would be shutting everything else down on my laptop just so that it had enough memory to be able to handle. So all the things that you want to think about in setting your stage and setting that scene. Other questions that are coming up about this? So we talked about your background, angle of the camera, what platform you might need to use, avoiding distractions. keeping your desk clear of distractions. I know that sometimes, I'm a parent, I have my phone near me most of the time, but in a case where if I were being interviewed, I would have had a very strong conversation with my family that this is the 1 hour, please try not to contact me. I'm going to be shutting down my phone so I can just focus on this. But really, you want to set it up so that you feel confident. You have created a space where you have minimized as many distractions as possible. And things can happen. Stay calm, but we're just trying to set the scene to minimize as much distraction, that you are the most visible for the interviewer, and that you have that opportunity to build that rapport and engagement. So let's talk about dressing the part. We talked briefly about this yesterday, but I want to bring up a couple more things that are uniquely different when we're talking about a virtual interview. So we still want to dress professionally. I would strongly encourage you, outside of shoes, wear the whole outfit, not just the upper half. Again, a conversation with a med school admissions team, and they were talking, they were interviewing someone, and they asked for, the candidate realized they left their water mug just a little out of reach, and they said, "Pardon me," stood up, and there were no pants. There were no pants. That's not something you want to do. There's also something to be said about that whole outfit being part of the uniform, part of what puts you in the headspace of, I'm interviewing right now. I'm not being casual. I'm not, this isn't something to take lightly. And so it's like putting on that coat, the armor or the uniform that puts you in that headspace. But you also don't want to be flashing behind because you only dressed half the part. I can say this with 100%. I know that if I'm Zooming from home, I am wearing, sweatpants, pajama bottoms, or shorts, because my house can get hot in the winter and or hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And I have to think twice about standing up if I'm just reaching across. I'm like, hold that thought, turning off the camera and sliding. But again, let's not put ourselves in that position during the interview. Whole outfit, whole uniform. Let's dress that part. See how they fit when you're sitting down. And this especially applies if you intend to wear the suit jacket. Sometimes when you sit down, suit jackets don't, they bulge up. This tends to happen with men's style suits more. So women's suits tend to be cut differently with a jacket. They're more fitted, or they're meant to hang a certain way. With men's style jackets, if that's what you are intending to wear, a little trick I learned from a colleague is, as you're sitting down, or in this case, you would already be sitting down, keep the top button buttoned, unbutton the bottom. That changes the hang of the jacket. It hangs a little bit looser, but you still have the look of a professional buttoned up jacket. Had this been an in-person interview, I would have said you shake hands and you use your other hand to unbutton the bottom button or two, so that by the time you're sitting down, your jacket is sitting well on you. And then check what your attire looks like with your background. I have a team member who has a brown wall. That's where they sit. And so if they wear certain things and it's dark, they start blending into their wall. I, at home, have to be very careful about wearing a white shirt because, during the day, it gets washed out with the background. And so again, just make sure that you're checking everything that you can possibly check to ensure that, again, you appear the way you want to appear, that you appear confident, and that, again, you've minimized anything that could distract you or make you uncomfortable during the actual interview. I'm going to do a quick pause again. Any questions before we move on?
Yeah, I have one.
Mhm.
Uh, do schools have a preference for like suit jacket color, like black or gray or navy blue? Not really.
No, I would say just check what um works for you and what works with your background. We talked a little bit about yesterday, but it's not about, the most expensive suit or the most, is it the most fashionable suit? Just conservative and classy. And again, people have no preference. I think when we were doing in person, and this might be applied to live, there are some schools out there that are very athletically focused and can get offended at a competing school's color. I would hope this would not happen at a professional school level interview. Um, but if you wanted to think about that, avoid the competing school's color. That's the only thing I would say. So I used to work at a private school in Southern California. For my goodbye party, they bought me a cake with the school colors of the school I was going to next. The director of the department walks in and, flat out keyed in on the cake and is like, why are there blank school colors in my building? Right? Some people get very dramatic about sports. So maybe avoid that. But in terms of what everything else, just it should look good on you. You should feel confident in it. You should feel comfortable in it. And it should sit well or fit well on you as you're sitting down. Does that help, Francisco?
Yeah, yes, that helps. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I touched upon this briefly before, but one, it's really important that you present your authentic self. Be enthusiastic, respond with confidence. You have this much to demonstrate interest, confidence, likability, build that rapport and connection. So make sure there is body language included, right? Again, that's the reason I'm showing a little bit more than a floating head. That's why I'm purposely emoting a little bit more. I'm naturally emotive. Usually I have to tone it down, but in this case, I am emoting so that you can see I'm paying attention, I'm interested. Again, this is me looking at the camera, which is about this much above my head. This is me looking at the screen. It's not super pronounced in this situation, but it can look like I'm trying to read answers, right? It can look like I have something on the screen that I'm paying more attention to, or that I'm staring at myself, which is, it can happen. I am distracted when there's movement. So I'm trying to look at the camera. I have, if I wanted to have some notes up, I could, and kind of as I'm thinking, glance over, but I want to make sure that I'm maintaining as much attention to the camera. I am trying to show body language, but other things to keep aware of. Zoom has done some benefits or virtual interviews, but I am seeing a lot more of this happening. So in a live interview, we might see, yesterday I was talking about the person that did this or the hair playing, but virtual platform has brought up other pieces. I am seeing a lot more people doing this or wiggling or kind of, all sorts of body language that we wouldn't do if we were live because we would be more mindful of it. You have to be just as mindful on a virtual, on a video platform. So if you know you're a wiggler, find yourself in a non-moving chair. If like at home and at work, I'll do this sometimes when I'm thinking, if I'm in a meeting with colleagues, I might, think back, do this. That's not something I'm going to want to do in a professional meeting. Again, I only have this much to showcase of myself, so I'm going to be very cognizant of my body language. I'm not also going to sit there and stare at the camera with no body language whatsoever trying to respond. That's not what I'm asking either. It is okay to look away as you're thinking, as long as you make your way back to the camera to respond. Again, that feeling of eye contact. If something goes wrong, if you freeze, if there's a delay, stay calm, take a big breath, continue with the interview. It's gonna be okay. Again, we're 2 years into this. There's nothing your computer can do that hasn't already happened. Again, we try to set ourselves up for as much as possible, but at the end of the day, something happens. Fine, know ahead of time, what am I supposed to do about it? Any questions? All right. So again, kind of a little repeat from yesterday, but presentation and attitude is everything. Again, I feel like sometimes on the virtual platform, I'm finding people doing all sorts of things that maybe they wouldn't have done had this been a live interview. Looking back, taking notes on the side, everything that looks like I'm not paying attention, leaning down as they're getting a sip of water or a bite of food. So make sure that we're presenting our undivided attention, but we're also presenting a positive attitude, even virtually. Smile. Hello, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Practice that self-talk, practice that being your authentic self and managing your anxiety. And, if something happens, big breath, will work through it. Using a more using your voice and facial expressions, from wigglers to just sitting there staring straight at me. Neither is okay. So practice, what do my facial expressions look like? I have found myself doing this a little bit more when I'm, when I'm talking to a student, and I have to be mindful of what that looks like. That doesn't look very professional. That looks like I'm tired. That looks like I'm not paying attention. And so again, being mindful of that on camera. Being careful of your pace is also critical. I am naturally a fast talker, and it can all blur together. I know sometimes that when someone is on a headset, I have a really hard time hearing if their mic piece isn't close to their mouth. And so, I try to stop people and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can we make some adjustments? Hopefully an interviewer does that for you as well, but just test everything out ahead of time. Speak confidently, clearly, calmly, and enunciate. With internet speeds and whatnots, we can have a little bit of a herky jerky, but we can also, if we're talking too fast, it can blur for the listener because they're not there completely to see your entire body. And so you have to be very cautious or careful of really enunciating. And yes, watching your nonverbal communication. None of this is ever okay. Right? We don't want to do any of that. We also don't want to just sit because this isn't comfortable either. This is very stiff and like too much. So I always find my spot, even on a virtual interview. I would sit like I was doing the interview so that someone is seeing as much of me as if I was sitting across from the table. I'm still doing the thing with my hand on my lap. I'm still using one hand. I'm still, as I'm thinking and then coming back to the camera. I'm practicing all of this and all my body movements on a chair. And I'm trying to, again, I have also developed this bad habit. So I'm being very careful. I have a foot riser. In this case, I'm going to put my foot on the ground because if I were in person, I wouldn't have a foot riser to play with. I have a little typing table. Sometimes if I'm just, speaking with a colleague, I put my feet up on it and that changes my posture and body language. So again, I'm being very careful that I'm mimicking how I would have my body behave as if it was a real interview or a live interview. So again, I'm going to pause. Questions for me? It's okay to have water. I get very thirsty and dry mouth. It's completely okay to have water. I might, I might not eat. I might, if you're going to have multiple interviews and you might have a break, I might have a little snack because I do get hangry. But again, trying to time it well. But any questions before I move on? All right. Just again, for just a quick comments before I will turn off the camera and we can just kind of have a general conversation with the rest of it. But again, be prepared to talk about anything. In terms of content, I think it's okay if you want to have some key points on your computer screen. Just be very careful that you're not trying to read it. You're not constantly looking down. That's what I'm doing now, right? Trying to constantly look down. So if it helps you feel a little bit comfortable, have a few bullet points ready to go. Just be aware that you wouldn't do that in a real interview, in a live interview. So again, trying to have it at eye level so you're not reading it, but also prepare yourself enough that you're not utilizing it to maintain the flow of the interview. Be comfortable about talking about anything on your application. If you wrote about it, be able to talk about it. Be prepared for any follow-up questions that it's looking for more depth. And if those are the few things that, gosh, this was a while back, I might not actually remember, a couple bullet pointed things are fine to have it on the screen. Just again, don't be distracted by it. Anything is fair game. So again, if we're really thinking about what, bullet pointed things that I might want to have up, but also note that if I wanted to have multiple things and I'm having to change things on my screen, you just saw my hand movement. You just saw me reach forward. It's very visual on a screen that I'm doing something. So again, you want to be careful that you're not demonstrating that. Anytime I reach, I have to lean forward a little bit. Even if I'm up against this, you can tell when I'm moving my arms around. Beyond getting water, we don't want to give the impression that we are doing something illicit. But again, be comfortable with multiple types of questions. If it's something that you're like, gosh, I'm not going to remember most of the details, have a few bullet points up just for yourself. Again, as a quick reminder, but not entire dialogues that you hope to provide. I'd mentioned yesterday when I'm preparing for an interview, I actually, write it all out, how I would respond. I read it out loud a few times and then I put it aside so that I'm focusing on general flow, but not necessarily word for word, everything that I want to say. I don't want to be rehearsed. I don't want to come across as memorized, but it helps me to script something and keep reviewing it so that I help remember the points. And my goal is to make most of the points. If I miss something, not a big deal. Again, let's structure your responses, right? Back up your comments with specific details. If it's behavioral, again, problem, action, results, knowledge. Make sure you're answering the question that's being asked, not the one in your head, not the one you really want to answer, but the one that you were asked. Make sure you're revealing your competencies, your strengths, you're demonstrating your maturity, your readiness, and you're being real and you're being authentic. Don't hold yourself stiff or overplay something. Just be yourself. And again, practice what you are like on camera. Practice with another person so that you can get feedback. We do mock interviews coming up this Friday, but you can also set up time to have a mock interview one-on-one, as well as come to drop-ins and try to meet with multiple people, trying to continue practicing. And at the end of the day, you made it this far. If you got the interview, they already are interested in you. Now they're really trying to evaluate, who you are in person, virtually, your communication, your ability to make that connection. If it is a team-oriented activity, how are you handling that over Zoom? What is it revealing about yourself? But have confidence and believe that you can do this, even if something happens, that you can handle that. And how great is that as a describe a challenge? Maybe at a future interview, at my last interview, everything went kaput. I stayed calm. I got reconnected. I've had my power go off in the middle of an interview. Power going off means I can't use anything because there's no internets. And I remember messaging my team back saying, it's currently the apocalypse at my house. And so I can join over phone. I quickly found an alternative. I can join over phone and connect with you all. I just won't have video capability right now. I see your question, Uma. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the slideshow, and I am going to stop recording now.